In this lecture, we're going to discuss fractures and dislocations. So in 1895, a German scientist, Wilhelm Röntgen, accidentally discovered the ability of an X-ray pulse to pass through the body and create an image on a screen, which he called an X-ray. Radiography is the visualization and study of parts of the body using X-rays. So how do modern X-ray machines work? First, they send an electron beam to pass through the body. Second, the X-ray will pass slower through denser material such as bone. And then finally, a film or a receiver will capture the image. So what are X-rays used for? X-rays are used to diagnose injury to bone, injury to joints, or injury to internal organs. They're also used to diagnose diseases in bones, diseases in joints, or diseases in internal organs. So let's take a look at some common ways bone can be damaged. The first is a dislocation. A dislocation is the displacement of bones at the joint. So what can cause dislocations? Dislocations can be caused by impact trauma to the joint. So how bad can dislocations get? Dislocations can be more painful because other tissues, such as ligaments and tendons, have been damaged. Healing can also take longer because damaged tendons and ligaments lack vascularization. In other words, they lack a direct blood supply or they lack a good blood supply. So next we'll take a look at fractures. So a fracture is a break in bone or a break in bones. So what can cause fractures? Fractures can occur when a physical force exerted is greater than the strength of the bone, causing the bone to break. Fractures can be classified as displaced, non-displaced, closed or simple, open or compound. So a displaced fracture occurs when a bone breaks and the broken ends are out of alignment. A non-displaced fracture occurs when a bone breaks and the broken ends are not out of alignment. A closed or simple fracture occurs when the fracture stays within the skin and the skin is not broken. And an open or compound fracture occurs when the fracture breaks through the skin's surface. So after classification of fractures, now we're going to take a look at the different types of fractures. Fracture types are categorized based on how the bone actually breaks. Fracture types and severity is dependent on the strength and direction of the forces that cause the bone to break. And there are 8 types of fractures. The first fracture is a transverse fracture. The second is oblique. Third is a spiral fracture. Fourth is a comminuted fracture. Fifth is an avulsion fracture. Sixth is an impacted fracture. Seventh is a fissure or hairline fracture. And 8 is a greenstick fracture. So a transverse fracture is a fracture that occurs at a 90-degree horizontal angle to the bone's axis. An oblique fracture is a fracture that occurs at a sloped angle or a curved pattern. A spiral fracture is a twisting fracture. A comminuted fracture is a fracture that is in multiple pieces. An avulsion fracture is a fracture that is a fragment of bone that breaks off due to a tendon or ligament pulling away from its attachment on the bone. An impacted fracture is a fracture that occurs in the middle of a bone when the epiphyses are driven into each other and the bone buckles. A fissure or hairline fracture is an incomplete fracture that has multiple small lines that are visible, and this fracture does not pass through the entire bone. And the last is a green stick fracture. A green stick fracture is an incomplete fracture where bone bends rather than breaks.